Katie. Thank you so much for taking the time for the interview today. And I know you're all about human design. And for those who don't know you yet, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me. So I'm a human design guide, teacher, coach, kind of all of those things, an enthusiast of human design at the very least. I run a business called Sort of Spiritual, and my sort of baby right now in business is an online program that I created called HD School, where I teach the human design system in a way that's a little bit more straightforward, upbeat, easy to understand, and it's something that I just really love. So that's a little bit about me. I live in Toronto in Canada. And yeah, I just kind of like accidentally fell into the human design world and can't get myself out, nor do I want to.
Yeah, I mean, personally, myself, I also love human design, and I'm really happy to be in your school, in your human design school. So, would you like to share a bit more like how you actually came into human design and also how it helped you?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I really found human design accidentally. I didn't go looking for it. I was at that time in my life. So I found it about 4 years ago. I was very much into any kind of personality test, any sort of personal development stuff, because my life at the time was very much a disaster. Like I was married in a marriage that wasn't working. I was in a job I didn't like. I really was quite miserable. Like nothing was really going how I wanted it to. I had been wanting to start a business for years and just like really couldn't get any traction with it. And so at the time, I was working for a business coach and I was her sort of virtual assistant, but I did in person stuff from time to time. And she was hosting this retreat in a beautiful hotel in Paris. And one of the coaches that she'd hired, which was interesting because the coach that introduced me to human design, introduced the group at the time, she was actually like a relationship and intimacy coach. So it was sort of strange for her to be even talking about human design because that's really not what she generally did. But I guess it was something that had been really impactful for her life and for her clients. And so she did a little presentation on human design and ran everyone's charts. It was like a mastermind retreat. So all the women in the mastermind. And she was kind enough to run my chart as well. We had met once before at an event that I had helped out at. And it was really interesting because in that room, there was all these women that were so successful, had, 6-figure, 7-figure businesses as entrepreneurs. And I was the only manifester in the room. And as she was kind of talking about manifestors, I was like, what? Like, if they're supposed to be so good at like initiating and making an impact and all this stuff, how come I'm the assistant getting paid, like $20 an hour or whatever it was at the back of the room, struggling with everything in my life, and all of these other people, projectors, generators, manifesting generators, there weren't any reflectors at the time there. It was like, what's wrong? Like, where's the disconnect? How come this is happening? And it was very much like this kind of confirmation of this feeling that I had like deep inside me that there were bigger things for me, and that like the way that I was living my life was so wrong, but I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to like, completely change or to get more into alignment. And so from there, I just couldn't stop learning about human design. And it was something, 4 years ago, human design looked very different than it does today. There wasn't all of these Instagram accounts or all these resources online. It was kind of difficult to really learn about human design, but I just could not get away from it because I just felt like it really had some answers for me. And so that was really how I got into human design, and then how my life has changed. Like, oh my goodness. Um, since finding human design, and this part isn't entirely because of human design, although there's, some overlap. I got divorced. I moved back to Canada. This was also during my Saturn return. So, everything kind of just crumbling in my life, but thank goodness, because it was a life that wasn't in alignment. It didn't feel good. So it needed to kind of like burn to the ground for something new to be rebuilt. I changed jobs a few times, but since I really started applying my human design, I got into a relationship that's been so incredible. I've been with him for almost 4 years as well. I met him not too long after I left my husband and found human design and all that stuff. And I've created a business that I love that's like so easy. Like sometimes it feels like I should be embarrassed because it's like business should be harder, Isn't it supposed to be difficult to like be successful and to create things and to launch things? And And things are just so much easier now. Like I've, like I said, I moved back to Canada. I got my own place after kind of moving around. I've fixed my finances. My health is so much better. It's just like really made such a massive upgrade to every area of my life. So I love it.
Yeah, that's amazing, especially how it helped you to, yeah, probably quit your job and, and start your business. That's amazing. And especially now that you are helping others to, yeah, maybe even do the same. So for those, I mean, probably there are many people here listening who already know human design. And for
Mhm.
those who are like, okay, human design, maybe I heard of it, maybe they didn't even hear of it. Would you like to quickly tell a bit more about what human design actually is and how it maybe differs to personality tests? Because I know many people, sometimes people are like, oh, another personality test. What's this about?
Yeah, I got that. Like I said, before I found human design, I was obsessed with all of the personality tests, whether it was, astrology or the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or the DISC assessment, like all of these things. And there's so many out there. So the human design itself, like personality tests, it's a tool for self-awareness. So it really helps you understand yourself, your strengths, your challenges, how you best can operate in the world, what your sort of purpose is here. And it's similar to astrology in the sense that it's based off of your birth date, time, and location. And that's where I think there's a lot of magic compared to other personality tests that require you to answer a bunch of questions, because your answers, in my opinion, and no hate to any of the other systems, but from my experience as well, your answers are only going to be as good as your self-awareness is. So, for example, with me, with Myers-Briggs, it's like I've gotten different types again and again and again because as my self-awareness changes, that type changes. And there's been certain periods in my life, where I really had very little self-awareness. So then it's difficult to get an accurate representation or reading of yourself through systems that require you to answer questions, because a lot of times our ego kind of comes in and it answers questions how we would like to be, or our like dream self. It's like, oh yeah, this is what I would do. In reality, that wouldn't be you at all, right? So that's something that I really love about it. And then it's different from astrology in the sense that, again, it brings in other systems. So it also combines a Chinese system called the I Ching, a bit of Kabbalah, a bit of the chakra system, as well as others, but those are kind of the main ones that it sort of synthesizes together. And I think it's really powerful. I also love astrology, but I like human design. I find it a little bit more grounded and a little bit more of like, okay, so I know this about myself, but what do I actually do with it? Because I feel like astrology is very like, this is how you are, this is what's happening in like the sky and the planets and this, but you're like, okay, but what do I do with this? And so human design, I think, breaks it down quite simply in terms of how we make decisions and how we best energetically interact with the world for the most ease in our life.
Yeah, even me, I really like human design because, like you explained, it actually helps you not from your point of view of how you see yourself or how you would like to see yourself, but really it's like how your soul kind of came into this earth and really shows you like this roadmap. And yeah, if there's someone and they're like, okay, wow, that's cool, and maybe they already checked what like type and profile they are, but how do they actually implement this in life? Like, for example, me as a projector, or even you as a manifester, how do you really are able to implement it in life? Because I know they might read a lot. Do you have any tips for them how they can maybe implement it in an easy way?
Yeah, and this is something I really want to start focusing on more, because it's like, I think it's very easy for people to get caught in like trying to learn more about human design when what they actually need to do is experiment with it in their own lives. Because, like, for you as a projector, I can only tell you so many times that it's like, you're designed to wait for the invitation, or it's like for your authority, for example, you have an emotional authority, right? And so it's like, I can explain to you what the emotional authority is, but that's also, so the authority in human design is how you're designed to make decisions. I also have an emotional authority. About 50% of the world does. It's like, I can share so many times about what that is, but it's not going to make any difference for you if you're still making really spontaneous decisions or like really emotional decisions, as opposed to experimenting with it and seeing how it works. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this recently, and I think it's actually most beneficial to really start experimenting with your authority, which again is how you're designed to make decisions. There's about 7 different authorities, depending on how you want to break them down. And I think that's an easy place to start as opposed to strategy, because strategy is kind of a like an interesting one depending on what your type is. Like for you, for example, waiting for the invitation, I know that some people have some resistance to that because it's like, well, if I just wait for things to come to me, nothing's ever going to happen. And I disagree. You know, I've worked with so many projectors that get really cool opportunities through waiting for the invitation and get to live their life with so much ease and so much like relaxation. But that's, you know, a side tangent. So I think in terms of implementing design, the 2 things that really are most important are your strategy and your authority. And each type is going to have the same strategy. So for example, I'm a manifester. The sort of official manifester strategy is to inform. I reframe it as to wait for the urge and then inform. For generators, it's about responding. Same with manifesting generators. And for projectors, it's waiting for the invitation. And for reflectors, it's waiting a lunar cycle. So each type is going to have its specific strategy. And then beyond that, there will be authorities that are sort of unique to the individual. Some of them are going to be based on type a little bit, but learning those 2 things of like what your strategy is. So that's really how you're designed to move through the world with the least amount of resistance. And I want to underline that because it's not that you can't do other things. Like as a projector, it's not like you can't initiate. You can, it's just going to take a lot more energy and it's going to be a lot more difficult, and it's likely going to, or it's potentially going to cause burnout. And so the strategy is really like how you can interact with the least amount of resistance. It's not to say that you can't do other things. It's just going to be a lot better for your alignment to follow your strategy. And then with your authority, it's like, okay, so if you're following your strategy, great. If you're not following your strategy, great. The authority is really how you're going to make decisions. And I always approach human design as an experiment. It's like, don't listen to what I say, figure it out in your own life, see it in your own life, how this works. And for myself with the emotional authority, it probably took about a year of really implementing it. And I don't think it needs to take everyone that long. It just happened to take me that long before it was like, oh, I really get how powerful this is now. Because when I first found out about emotional authority back at that hotel in Paris, I was like, this is not useful. I have to wait to make decisions. Like, who cares? How is that helpful? You know? But the more that I've gone into emotional authority and really began to understand it, it's like, oh, yeah, this is actually a game changer in my life. And I could see all of the terrible spontaneous decisions that I made. And now I know it's so much easier and there's so much less pressure because I know as someone with emotional authority, waiting to make a decision is never going to be a bad thing. If something doesn't respect my time that I need to wait to make a decision, it's not the right decision. It just like makes things so much easier. And there's a lot more to it than that with emotional authority. But in terms of really implementing human design into your life, those are the 2 places I always recommend to start, is with your strategy and authority. But even if you're not like fully committed to the strategy piece yet, at least learn your authority and how you can really make aligned decisions for yourself in your body. And that will kind of help put you back into alignment or more on that path.
Yeah, I really love your answers and also the examples you gave. And even with the waiting for invitation at the beginning, when I learned about it as a project, I was like, whoa, great. So I just sit here and wait for something. And
Yeah.
but what if nothing happens? You start asking yourself. And then what is also amazing is, I think, if you are a projector like me and you are like, oh, wow, actually, I have to wait for an invitation. That would actually be best for me. You start understanding how many marketing strategies, like the old ones, they don't suit you. And that's actually an answer to why your marketing might not be working. And then even with the emotional authority, it was for me a huge relief because I finally understood why I feel like people pushing me in a corner if they want me to make a decision in the moment. And it's something I never liked. So That's so amazing. And I think it's really helpful not only for us, but also to understand others. So
Yeah.
I really love this part of human design, how you can also see and play with it with your team or even parents or sisters and stuff. So
Yeah.
do you even like implement it in, so you have it, I mean, of course you have it in your private life first, then you had it in your business. So how was it for you to build your business on your human design type?
Oh gosh, it has been so incredible. And it's also been hard because what I find is sometimes tricky with human design is having the courage to actually follow through with what your design is kind of like putting you in the direction of. And so, one of the big things that really made a big change that kind of opened up more space for my human design about, was it 2 years ago now? No, I think it was only in early 2020 before all this happened. It seems like a lifetime ago. But I remember having this feeling, like this sudden realization, because I'd been working on starting a coaching business for a while at this point, and then realizing that after having this one to-do list on my to-do, or one to-do on my to-do list for like a year and a half of trying to do this marketing stuff in my coaching business that I clearly didn't want to do if it was on my to-do list for that long, having this like kind of realization that I don't have to do things that I hate in my business. Like I don't have to do marketing that I hate. I don't have to do stuff that feels awful. Are there going to be like some tasks that you're kind of like, this is annoying, whatever, sure. But in the general kind of scope of things, it's like you don't have to do stuff that you hate. And that I think is actually a really great place to start with human design in your business, is to looking at creating more space. So it's like your time isn't completely taken up by these things that you resent and these things that you don't like. So you create space for the right things to come in. And then for me, I'm a manifester, as I said. And so for me, it's really about waiting for the urge and then following the urge. And the urge is very different than an idea, although it sometimes takes a little bit of time for manifestors to discern the difference between the two. But when I really let myself start following the urges, things just got a lot easier all of a sudden. You know, I had been trying to get clients for so long in my coaching business and I really wasn't getting any. And then when I started following the urges of like, teach this class, you know, post this thing on Instagram. And then it was like, oh my gosh, I got my first clients within like weeks of starting to do that, when I had spent years trying to get clients and it wasn't working. And then after I was doing that for a while, I started getting this urge to teach human design and to create HD school essentially. And I probably resisted that for like a solid 3 months because I was like, no, like I can't do that. Like, you know, there's other people that teach it. No one's going to want to buy from me, like all this stuff. But this urge was very relentless. It wouldn't go away. And that's something that I like to kind of remind people of, is to come from that place of opportunity and abundance, of like the right things are going to keep coming for you. So as a as a projector, let's say, if you're waiting for an invitation and you're like, oh, the invitation's not coming, like it'll find its way for you. You might need to clear some space in your life. You might need to get some alignment, whatever. But it's not like we're missing out on anything. And as a manifester, as I was following the urges, it's like things in my business just all of a sudden got so easy. And I do a lot of things that I probably like quote unquote shouldn't do. Like I'm very cyclical kind of in my energy. So it's like sometimes I'll show up a lot online because I have a lot of energy to do that. And then sometimes I'll disappear for like a couple of weeks or months, which is really not what you're supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to be consistent and show up and serve your audience. And I do that. I take care of my people, but not in the way that like online marketers and like past coaches have told me that I have to. And it's been fine. My business hasn't suffered. Could it have grown faster? I don't know, maybe, but I feel good about it and I'm happy with it and I'm not stressed out and I'm not overwhelmed. And so for me, that's really where the magics come, is allowing myself to follow what my human design says, even though sometimes it feels scary and it's like, why should I be doing this? This doesn't make any sense. It's like you can trust these things that are coming to you, even if it feels like it's a stretch or it's growth or like, I don't see how this is going to work out. It's like experiment, detach a little bit from the outcome and just see what happens, because for example, for me, yeah, my HD school was successful when I followed that urge. But even if it hadn't been, maybe it was going to lead me in another direction that I was going to get another urge to follow another thing. And so it's like detaching from the outcome and trusting that you're being put in these directions for a reason.
Yeah, amazing answers. And especially like really just following the urge for your profile. I think it's amazing. And even me with like uh with like having this defined crown, it's like always like all these ideas are coming in. And yeah, so I think it's really amazing like how many opportunities we get if we start experimenting and integrating human design in our life. So what do you think, do you have any like plans for the future? What is it you would love to create, or will it be for a while? Will you stay with the HD school? So yeah, tell us a bit about your
Oh, I have
goals.
so many things that I want to be doing. I really want to continue to grow HD school and to make it the best that I can make it. There's, on like almost a daily basis, I get ideas for like new classes and do this and, create more YouTube videos. And I'm in the process of launching a podcast as well. The first season of which is going to be very much focused on human design, just to kind of create that beginner resource for people who come to human design and don't really know where to start or don't know how to implement it. So I'm working on that. I have an urge that I don't know, I'm resisting this one as well, just because of time mostly, like in terms of my available time and energy, to create like a human design book, which there are lots out. There's not lots, there are some out there, but again, I feel like a lot of it is like outdated language or like an older way of looking at it. There's so many things that I want to do. I want to create some courses in different aspects of human design, like in terms of human design and sexuality, or human design and business, or relationships, or all of these things. There's one that I'm actually quite excited about that I might do in the fall. We'll see how things pan out. That's like very much about looking at manifestation through human design, because it's something that's been so helpful to me. And I think there's a lot of guidance in the human design chart about that. And I don't think it's currently being talked about very well. And there's a lot of sort of misleading information there. So I'm feeling quite excited about that, but we'll see how it plans out when the time comes.
That sounds amazing. And even the book, it would be so cool, I think, because even when I was looking for resources and I really wanted to learn a lot about it, like go deeper in it, um, like you say, usually you find really outdated stuff, or it's like, yeah, well, it just doesn't really look that appealing because it's made from, I mean, from people who are older than us, so they have a different taste. And so to have it like a modern aspect in it, I think it's really really cool, like in your course. um yeah, and another question, by the way, I wanted to ask you, because some people, when I meet them, and they are kind of new to human design, or they are like a bit of like, "Ah, but this human design to me, it's a bit like, it's a bit weird because it puts people in a box, and putting people in a box is not good." So, what do you feel about this? If people say this to you?
So a few things. One is like I invite people to use human design that resonate with human design. If they feel like it doesn't resonate with them, cool. Maybe it's not the right time for them to experiment with it in their lives. And I very much believe that as opposed to like putting people in a box, is that it creates a framework for us to work from. And when we have a framework that we can like hold ourselves up from, it's like then we have so much freedom. And I think there's a lot of freedom in having limits to a degree, in the sense of like our world is so infinite, there's so many possibilities, you can't possibly do all of them in a lifetime, and that's okay. And so to have something that kind of narrows down our focus of like, oh, this is actually what's going to be the path of least resistance for me, and these are actually what my strengths are, like especially in human design, when you're getting down to like the gates and the channels and the centers and those things, it's so helpful to understand like who you are. And it can be so affirming. Like, for example, for me, one of the big gifts in my chart is being able to explain transformational information in a way that makes sense to people. And when I first like kind of looked into that, I was like, what good is that? That's like so useless, you know? And now I'm like, oh, I've literally built my entire business off of that. Okay, cool. And so it can be really affirming. But I think when people look at human design, often what they're introduced to is the 5 types. So like the manifestor, the generator, the manifesting generator, reflector, and projector. And that sometimes feels boxy to people, but it's not like, to me, I don't see it as something that's boxy. It's like it's a vehicle that helps you understand how your energy works. So it's like understanding, you know, how different, I don't know, types of cars or boats or planes or whatever work. It's like you just want to understand how your vehicle operates. You can still go anywhere, you can still do anything. It's just how are you going to do that in a way that's easier for you, that's more aligned for you. And one of the things, especially with the strategy and the type piece, so again, like the strategy for you, for example, is to wait for the invitation. It's like that's just making your life so much easier. So it's like you don't have to go in 17 different directions trying to make all these things work. You get to have the aligned thing come to you, and it just gets to be easy. And so, do some people interpret that as limiting or like being in a box? Sure. And it can also just be really easy and really relaxing and really enjoyable, and having that trust and that kind of surrender of like, I know that the right things are going to come to me, and that might feel a lot better to you as opposed to like trying to get outside of this box and do all these things and being exhausted and burnt out and, you know, not really enjoying yourself.
Yeah, and another aspect I really love is like if some people they really are struggling with putting down their strength, or where they might have some conditioning and they really want to work on themselves. So it's really helpful to look at it and then maybe getting more aware of the strength, because I know so many people who are like, oh, but I don't know what I'm good at. And so it's
Yeah.
really helpful.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. Like one of my favorite ways of using human design really is as like a personal development tool. So, you know, the basis of human design is using your strategy and authority. But one of my favorite things to do to kind of like shortcut that alignment almost is to really understand all of the energies in your chart. So whether it's understanding your centers that are colored in or that are white, you know, I think I have 2 YouTube videos on the centers. So if you are interested in learning more, you can see that. Or whether it's understanding the gates, which are all of like the numbers in your design. Those really are your strengths, but they also have a challenging side to them. And so seeing like, okay, which of these do I resonate with the strengths and which of these do I really resonate with the challenges? And so it's so easy for me. I mean, I use the term easy a little bit relatively here because whenever you're working with your challenges, it can be difficult, right? But it's easy for me to see and to be so much more aware of these challenges that pop up and these like potentials for self-sabotage that pop up. And it's just like, oh, I'm doing that thing again. And, you know, as an example in my chart, I have the gate 10, which is associated in the sort of higher expression with self-love, with empowerment, with behavior, and in the challenging expression, potentially with victimhood and disempowerment. And so it's in my chart somewhere that I'm likely going to have challenges with that. And so instead of like bullying myself of like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? How come you can't get this stuff together? Um, or falling into that kind of victim consciousness of like, what's the point? Like nothing that I do is ever going to make a difference. Like when I catch myself in that, it's like, okay, you're just in that challenging expression of gate 10. I know how to transform that. I know how to get out of that. I know what I need to do. And then it's just like, okay, this is so much easier. And it's so much more like, I don't know, like I feel like you just have a little bit more grace with yourself and you can give yourself a little bit more permission where it's like, okay, this is just, you know, a challenging expression of this energy. It's okay. I'm not a bad person. I'm not failing at life. You know, it's just like you have all the energies right there that you can clearly see and that you can work with. And then I think it, to your point about strengths, one, if you don't feel like you have any strengths, that's not true, first of all, but it can be really easy to see them in the chart. And by easy, I mean, it might not be easy when you're first learning it, but when you see them, it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is a thing, but it comes so naturally to me. I didn't even value it as anything. So there's often that part, but then it's also being able to trust that where So again, going back to sort of my experience with following the urge, where it's like when I had this urge to create HD school and I was like, no, 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 no. But then it's like, no, that's literally a gift in my chart, is being able to explain things. So me following this urge to create HD school, it makes so much sense, because that's the biggest compliment I get, is that I explain human design in a way that actually makes sense to people. Um, and so it's like, oh yeah, okay, I can trust this urge because it's very much aligned with the strengths that are in my chart. So yeah, I totally agree. That's one of my favorite ways of looking at human design, is really understanding what your strengths are.
Well, I mean, I would love to keep on going, but I don't want to overwhelm people. So thank you so much. And I know you have a free resource. So would you like to tell us a bit more if there's someone like, oh, I want to learn more from Katie about human design?
Yeah, of course. So this is probably like my most popular freebie that I have. People have been loving it. And it's a cheat sheet for the gates. So again, the gates are all those numbers that you see on the chart. They can be a little bit difficult to find good information about. And so I've just made little kind of short blurbs for each of the numbers. There's 64 of them in total. And it can help you understand your own chart, or the charts of people in your life or your business, or however you want to look at it, of really what their strengths are. And then I also include some information about the planets. So if you're looking at your body graph, you'll see there's all these like symbols. There's 2 rows of symbols on either side. Those are about the sort of planetary energies and how those might play out. So it's like something that, might be a challenge for you, something that's your gift, something that you're here to share, something that you're here to be grounded in. So it's like helping yourself to understand how those energies are potentially going to play out for you in your life.
Cool. Thank you. So if they would love to connect with you, where would they find you best?
Yeah, so the place that I'm most active is on Instagram. So I'm at sort of spiritual. There's periods in between the words, but if you just type in sort of spiritual, you'll find it. Or my website is sortofspiritual.com, and that'll link you to like my YouTube channel and other stuff as well.
Yeah, cool. And even on your website, they will probably find the resource, right? But I will also
Yeah.
link it, obviously. So if you want to have the free cheat sheet, then just check it out in the links. And as a final question, do you have any motto in life, or do you just, well, enjoy your life?
I think for me, it's just about it's about growth and expansion. It's like seeing where life takes me. I'm not so attached to things, but it's really like having that alignment, having life feel good, and then allowing it to sort of unfold as it unfolds. That's kind of like the lens that I look at things through.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And is there anything else you would love to share to those who are listening?
Just like we were talking about earlier, to experiment with things. Like just start where you're at, start experimenting, start kind of setting an intention to work with your design if it feels something that's aligned with you, and let yourself learn, let yourself make mistakes, and it'll all kind of like make sense the more that you work with the system.
Thank you so much. And yeah, really, really enjoyed the interview.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.